And we're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Steve Killelea, the founder of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Steve, you were talking about cyber threats and some of the new threats that are coming that could imperil peace. Please continue with your thoughts on that.
Sure. So if we look at peace over the last decade, what we find it's slightly decreased. So it's about 2.5%, let's say. But what's interesting is it's almost evenly balanced. 81 countries deteriorated in peace while 80 improved. So the whole thing's really finely balanced. We went back the last decade and we took out the wars in the Middle East, then the world actually would have become more peaceful. So it's really quite balanced. But as we start to look into the data of what, we can see some trends which are good and other trends which are, well, let's say, more worrying. So overall, if we look at positive peace, which is a very, very good predictor of future peace, peace is actually improving globally. Something like 75% of the countries have increased. But if we start to dig deeper into it, we can see more nuanced outlook, if you like. So mentioned earlier on, positive peace is comprised of attitudes, institutions, and structures. So if we look at the attitudes, particularly in the Western democracies, they're deteriorating. So they're things like perceptions of corruption within society, concepts of the fractionalised elites. That's where the elites within society are fighting more and more. You could see that epitomised, let's say, in the Brexit or the recent US elections. They're the examples of that. Disinformation is on the increase, and I think a lot of people are aware of that as well. And so these things come together, and so we're seeing sort of an erosion, if you like, of some of these basic attitudes which have really been held Western societies together. And so an offshoot of all of this is we go over the last decade, we find demonstrations and riots have risen 240%. And so that's a lot. That's really a lot. And so if you look in your neighbourhood of Canada, the US has had the 10th largest drop in positive peace in the world in the last decade. And you can see that getting played out within the society.
Because that was due to internal discord then?
Yeah, they've fallen on a whole range of different measures. So there's fractionalised elites. That'd be one. Issues with the minorities. So you find that there's group grievances have been on the increase. Perceptions of corruption. Right. Within the increase, and also a lot of measures of equality as well, which I don't think any of them come as any surprise.
Right, because the U.S. externally hasn't been involved in a major war for years now, but you're looking at it from a broader perspective.
Not much broader perspective, yeah. So, much broader perspective.
So what are the countries at risk right now? Do you have an indicator on that?
Sure. If we're looking at the area which I think of concern to me would be around the Horn of Africa and the Sahel. Obviously, like you've got conflicts like Yemen going on. You've got a lot of destabilisation in the Middle East, let's say through the Persian, Arab conflicts. But the one which is a little bit off the map for most people is, I'd say, Western Africa and the Sahel. Now, what you've got is some of the poorest countries in the world up in that area. You've also got 17 countries in sub-Saharan Africa which more than double their population in the next 30 years. And that's really a lot of people, and a lot of them are overpopulated already. Mm-hmm. They're also suffering from a lot of ecological stress as well. That's particularly food and lack of water. And so should these populations increase, they're only going to get stronger. So these are, the conflicts likely to increase quite dramatically. Also, with the last Global Terrorism Index we put out, what we could find is that 7 of the 10 countries with the biggest increases in terrorism were up in that area around Sahel. So they're places like Niger, let's say, Nigeria, and the other ones in the region.
Right.
And The issue, the issue is they're really sort of the affiliates or chapters of the Islamic State. So we can see them starting to rise again in those regions. And I think it really does need attention, but it's a holistic problem, and that's the real issue: overpopulation, shortage of resources, governments with the weak governments which haven't got control of their areas, and rising Islamists. And we can see what happened in Syria and Iraq.